Welcome back to Tethered and Whole. I'm Matt, and today we're talking about something every educator, leader, and frankly, every human being has encountered, whether we had the language for it or not. So here's the summary of kind of what we're talking about up front, right? Learning to recognize and respond to energy vampires is one of the ways we stay tethered to ourselves instead of being pulled into other people's emotional gravity. Because you can't be present, you can't be effective, you can't be whole if all your energy is being siphoned away without your consent. Let me tell you a story. This day started innocently enough. Hall duty. My usual spot outside the cafeteria, right inside the front doors, propped open to welcome kids streaming in from parent drop-off. Nothing unusual, nothing ominous. And then, suddenly, a mom was standing in front of me, voice raised, arms cutting through the air, her words landing with force and with certainty. Within seconds, there was a ring around us. Students slowing down their walk a little bit, teachers pausing mid-stride, all of us watching this moment expand beyond its original size. There I was. I was a new administrator, badge all nice and shiny, confidence still fragile, knowing, intellectually at least, that I was the guy, the one ultimately responsible, the one expected to manage the situation. But she was so strong, and she was saying things that sounded so reasonable. And I remember feeling myself shrink just a little bit, even as I stood there. And I realize now what I didn't understand then. I was standing in the presence of an energy vampire. At the time, I couldn't name it. I only knew the after effect, the way that the air felt different once she left, the way my thoughts felt scattered, the way my body buzzed like it had just been through something. Not dramatic enough to be a crisis, but not small enough to shrug it off either. And when I look back, I picture it vividly. My energy and the energy of everyone watching, lifting like wisps of light, getting wrapped around her head and inhaled with each breath. Something like Ursula from The Little Mermaid, feeding on what wasn't hers to take in the first place. Energy vampires don't always announce themselves either. They don't wear capes. They don't hiss. But they drain emotional energy and leave you blinking in their wake, thinking, oh my God, what just happened? And here's the tricky part. They often sound reasonable. They often feel compelling. They often activate your empathy, your sense of fairness, your desire to keep the peace, which is exactly how they work. Now, there are a bunch of different types, more than I'm going to cover here. Once you learn to spot them, you start seeing them everywhere. The first one is master manipulator, the one who needs control at all costs. They're persuasive, they're articulate, they frame their needs as logic and their preference as inevitability. Underneath, there's often deep insecurity, but what you experience is pressure. You feel nudged, steered, subtly boxed in. The teacher who insists their grade level always needs extra support while quietly diminishing colleagues. The student leader who dominates the group with charm while twisting facts to stay in charge. The parent who uses cynicism at a PTO meeting to push their agenda, masking their fear as their authority. And then there's victor-victim. This one's trickier because they arrive wearing helplessness. Nothing is ever their fault. Circumstances are always stacked against them. Their primary tool is guilt. They sigh. They lament. They recount injustices until someone, often you, steps in to fix things just to make the discomfort stop. They're the colleague who endlessly complains about scheduling until others volunteer to cover. The student who blames grades on everyone or everything else. The aide who frames every challenge as someone else's failure, forcing the team to compensate just to keep things moving. Next one is Nancy Narcissist. Nancy's charming. She's magnetic. often celebrated, and completely uninterested in you. Conversations orbit them. Stories star them, while empathy is absent, but charisma in spades. Staff meetings become monologues, class discussions get hijacked, newsletters highlight one voice while others fade into the background. You leave these interactions oddly, I don't know, energized, but then oddly empty too, like you've been dazzled, but not seen. Finally, there's Jude judgment. Jude feeds on criticism. They bolster a fragile ego by pointing out flaws in others, sometimes with humor, sometimes with sarcasm, sometimes with, I'm just being honest. And they mock, they joke, they roll their eyes. And because people laugh along, the damage often goes unnamed. The veteran teacher who belittles younger colleagues. It's the student who disguises put-downs as jokes, and the staff member who critiques leadership in the lounge, poisoning the soil where trust and innovation should grow. What all of these have in common is not malice. It's insecurity. And while insecurity becomes weaponized, it drains everyone nearby. Research backs this up. Toxic interpersonal behaviors lead to emotional exhaustion, reduced performance, and a slow erosion of well-being. But here's the empowering part. Awareness, just like in so many other things, changes the game. When you find yourself in an energy vampire's orbit, the first step is noticing. Notice what's happening. Notice what's happening in your body. Tight chest, racing thoughts, sudden self-doubt. Then subtly shift your physical stance. Step back, angle your body, reduce eye contact. These aren't acts of disrespect, they're acts of self-preservation. And remember this, their behavior is a reflection of their inner world, not your worth. You cannot change a rigid mind, but you can stop feeding it. Neutral responses, maybe short answers, silence always works. These are not weaknesses, they're energy-conserving strategies. Psychological research tells us that self-awareness and emotional regulation reduce the impact of these encounters. You don't need to win the interaction. You need to leave it intact. Even better than response is prevention. Protect your energy proactively. Build daily practices that increase resilience, like movement, rest, mindfulness, moments of quiet. Establish boundaries before you need them. Decide in advance what you will and won't engage with, because energy vampires don't disappear when ignored, but boundaries limit their access. And folks, here's the final reframe I want to leave you with. Boundaries aren't walls. They are not walls. They are shields. They don't punish others. They protect you. Boundaries say, this is where I end and you begin. And when boundaries are clear, insecurity has less room to roam. Finally, and this one matters more than we admit, choose to release the interaction. How you reframe it and deliver it later. Retell the story with humor, not bitterness. When you turn the moment into a funny story instead of a festering grievance, you reclaim your power. Humor rewrites the narrative. What once drained you becomes fuel for a monologue. What once irritated you becomes insight into a character's personality. So here's your strategy for the week. Think of an energy vampire in your workplace. Just one. Decide now what your boundaries are with that person. How will you communicate with them? How will you hold them when tested? Because they will be tested. The goal isn't to eliminate difficult people. You can't do that. The goal is to stay tethered to yourself in their presence. You don't owe anyone your energy. You don't owe anyone access to your emotional reserves. And the more you practice protecting them, the more you'll find that what once drained you no longer has the same pull. Oh, one more thing. If you are the energy vampire in the room, do us all a favor and be self-aware enough to take it down a notch. I don't know, wear some silver, eat garlic at lunch, something, because you're wearing us all out. So, really, thanks for spending these minutes with me on Tethered and Whole. Stay vigilant, stay grounded, stay tethered, and I'll see you next time.